I'm with Mr. Cornwall, Chuck Charlebois. Chuck, you are an institution here in Cornwall, and your pet projects over the decades have been the waterfront.
Correct.
And right now, we've seen some condo development with the Chem buildings, and we've seen some talks of some other stuff. But lo and behold, this week, everyone's in an uproar over these chemical tanks being placed at the old oil tank facility.
Yes, well, to be expected, if anybody didn't thought that they were going to do something like that, a commercial or industrial project, and not get any feedback from the public, they were wrong.
Well, it seems weird because, you know, you've got City Hall saying they never heard about it, and Guy Lozon said he never heard about it, but we have a waterfront committee, we have a waterfront acquisition committee, we have another politician that said that that exact parcel of land was offered to the City of Cornwall a few years ago, but on the proviso that it was partnered with Akwesasne, was offered for $1. So how do we develop all this waterfront property when we've got these ugly chemical tanks right there?
Well, you can't. It makes it very difficult, and we've got to remember that RMP, the local entities down there are spending, I think they spent $12 million already on building a property, and $3 million on preparing to build 2 more properties. So one, you need to
Which properties are you talking about right now?
the cotton mills.
The cotton mills,
okay?
the lofts,
and
yeah.
the other lands down there. There's also other developers that have designed
Yeah.
plans to do other projects. So we're talking about millions of dollars in investment, in jobs, and also in taxes. So I guess the issue is, what's the best land use? You know, for years, when I started the committee in 1985, the Waterfront Committee, that was a section by itself, and the one thing we wanted to do was to get rid of the then 5 oil tanks. It took us 15 or 18 years.
That was the Chem family oil tanks,
It was
right?
owned by Cornwall Warehousing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And it cost taxpayers a bunch of money to clean up that property, right?
Well, I'm not sure who's paid for it, but
Okay.
I'm sure the feds somebody had to remediate the site to some standard.
Yeah.
And somebody has to make sure that what they build now is up to certain standards environmentally, right? So the question is, why does that happen without involving the community? Because waterfront anywhere in the world is, you got to be friendly to the users, which is the general public. So it's not made for industrial use anymore. That's passé.
No.
We've had that.
Before we started the interview, you, like myself, have had nothing but non-stop stream of emails and calls and stuff. Have you spoken with Mayor Kilger?
I've spoken to Mayor Kilger, and he explained to me that he's made some calls,
Okay.
and that the city is issuing a press release today, of which I don't know what's
Right.
going to get in, but supposedly will address how all this is going on, and that means all the feds don't have to talk to anybody, they don't have to get a permit, they don't have to, whatever.
Did Mayor Kilger mention to you whether he'd known anything about this?
No, when I talked to some city people, they had mentioned that a year ago or so there had been some discussions, and that the committee, the employees, the planning department had told the federal government, those entities, that there was a waterfront plan and that it did not include keeping, and in those days, the existing tanks, that means certainly not adding any more oil or tanks. They're not oil tanks. We must make sure that people understand that they're tanks.
Right.
But they're still tanks.
It takes construction.
It takes construction and takes away from the residential thing we want to do. Plus, what does the lease say? Does the lease say that they could change the chemicals? And why the hell would we want that on our waterfront?
We don't know, but going backwards to your conversation today with Mayor Kilger, did he have any awareness of what was going on?
No, he said that they would be issuing a press release. I think he wanted to keep it like that, and that's fine.
Well, I got his press release. All it said was that he was going to initiate conversation with the feds.
Right. Well, and I've done the same thing. I've sent some to all the ministers, including the Prime Minister, Jim Brownell, Jim McDonnell, all of them. Saying, listen, we need to have a conversation here. Obviously, people aren't talking.
Would you be surprised? Well, first off, you guys are talking about having a protest on Monday?
Monday, the Chamber is organizing with the Group Renaissance and Le Village at noon hour, a friendly demonstration, we'll call it, at the site.
See, the chamber didn't send me a press release either. Leslie doesn't like to send me emails.
Okay,
But
well, I can send you a copy. I'll send it to you.
I appreciate that. You and I have always had good relations.
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to find out that these tanks were discussed at the last Waterfront Development Committee that the mayor himself was present at?
Well, I have an email from a member of those committees that states that they knew nothing about this.
Okay. But
So-
would it surprise you if that did occur after all of this?
Well, I attend those things. I'm pretty well versed in
Were
it.
you at the last one? Because we have two
No.
witnesses at the last one.
No, but I made a presentation, if you
Yeah.
remember, a few months back with our other project that Renaissance has been working on, which is the redevelopment of the Cornwall Harbor.
Yeah.
And that affects everything because it's all, I thought it was all the same property. And if they're going to be able to develop the federal government without talking to people, what's going to happen to our plans?
I agree, but it's just bewildering that two people that were at the last meeting that the mayor attended said that these tanks were discussed at that after the
They
meeting.
were not?
They were discussed after the meeting.
Well, then nobody called me, and I'd
Yeah.
be a little bit offended about that because it's of my interest. And of course, they knew a project I was working on, which was the Cornwall Harbor.
Right.
I've been working on that for 2 years.
Well, and Mayor Kilger knows you've been working on that project.
Well, absolutely. And I saw Guy Lozon 2 years ago about the same thing. And before I delivered my results to the planning board, I also delivered advance copies to the partners.
Mr. Lozar MP stated on other media today that he had no clue about these tanks.
That's correct. And he stated that he's going to contact for Transport Canada or something. Well, I talked to his office today, and we've been trying to meet. As a matter of fact, I was with Guy at a function Saturday. I sat at his table, I mentioned it. He said the same thing, did not know anything about it, so I take him at his word.
Right.
But today when I talked to his staff, I said, I need to talk, because I don't like to argue with people. I want to just resolve the issue.
Yeah.
Not only for the oil tanks, but what's going to happen with the other facility called the Cornwall Harbor?
Well, with you having the intimate knowledge of the harbor project, what happens to all of the projects that you people are working on if these tanks are allowed to go to fruition?
Well, if there's any good thing about this, it may be that that'll come on the table and we'll be able to make sure that doesn't happen when it comes to the Cornwall Harbor.
Question, how would City Hall know that the construction of the tanks would not impede the view if they didn't have access to the plans beforehand?
Well, apparently this Tina Morris, which is the ministry person, gave somebody some information, and everybody's being rerouted to her right now. But, you know, like for me, I'm just a Joe citizen. I can't call the ministry people and ask for this and ask for that, and they'll give it to me. I'm not the media.
No.
Right? It's
Well,
not the same thing.
As we've just discovered, even being the media, even being the biggest media, there are government elected officials and government officials that still will violate the trust of the public and not follow through with documents.
There's lots of time to correct this.
Yeah.
All we need is for the interested parties to meet, discuss what's happening, and is it the best land use, and things like that, and then come to a conclusion.
Which would be what? How do we correct this? What is your solution?
Well, my solution would be no thanks.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if you've started construction, just because you started the construction doesn't mean you keep building it. It's like saying, I know I'm drunk, but I'm going to drive anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? So we have this discussion, and if we are all working for the interests of the public in Cornwall, well, then we should come to some conclusion that would satisfy the public that we've done our due diligence, if you will. Again, remembering that there's another property.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, there's another 15, 20, 30 million dollars in investment that may or may not, because of this, happen.
But if the federal government legally is allowed to lease this land to this tank outfit, there's nothing really that can be done to stop it.
No, I don't agree with that. They may not legally be, but morally, they have to be reminded, and that's any government, okay? I don't care which one it is. They have to be reminded what's in the best public interest of the citizens of Cornwall. We are spending millions, and we want to get tourism in. We want to create those jobs and create those housing.
So we can't build an amusement park around the tanks. We can't.
Well, you can't suck and blow. You know, I mean,
That's a great quote.
well, you know, I mean, you want it user friendly. Now, you mentioned the natives of Cornwall. You know,
Akwesasne.
Akwesasne,
Yeah.
Mike Mitchell. I went to school with Mitchell, with Chief Mitchell, and
Is he that old?
nah, well, I'm not that old either. But let's put it this way: we know each other very well. We've been at presentations where he's presented, I've presented, and they want claims to the land. Okay, and we know that that's ongoing. But there's also 15,000 natives that work between the three reserves, that live, I should say, between the three reserves. We should be promoting that culture. And we could do that along the waterfront using the theme that they did with their arena, the turtle.
But doesn't that go back to the fact that the city was offered the property for $1 as long as they partnered with Akwesasne and they refused?
Well, I don't believe that. I would have to see that writing on the wall. If that was done, I can't see why the city would go against its own bylaw.
Well, apparently this
its own law.
occurred about 8 to 12 years ago. Somewhere in it could be as long as 10 years ago.
I started the committee in 1983.
I know.
So that's way back then.
Yeah.
So I don't see that happening. It's certainly not indicated in the last lease. And we talked about the lease 2 years ago and asked them to get on that lease before it's rented to another entity.
Like it just has.
Like it just has twice. Once was the harbor, and now apparently this new firm on the oil tanks. We've sent out some signals. The Waterfront Committee has had numerous public meetings. Renaissance has had public meetings. Can't say nobody was consulted. All these people were invited. The proper authorities have upheld a copy of our plans anyway. I delivered to them prior to the delivering the request to the planning board because it made sense.
So there's been no lack of communication with the federal government.
Well, not from my part. I knew with Mr. Lozon, as I said, I spoke to him 2 years ago. I gave him the designs of the Cornwall Harbor project before going to planning. The city's received, the city planning board has received it. All the aldermen, the department heads and whatever were all at one point or another involved in this project. If you look at the YouTube and you go under Cornwall Revitalization, they're all there being interviewed.
So Chuck, you know, listening to all the details that I've heard of from other people and yourself today, it seems that you can only draw one of two possible conclusions. One, the federal government and the city, or certain levels of the city government, did this as a deal and knowingly, or the federal government just did it all on its own and said, screw Cornwall. There's really no in between.
Well, to me there is, because I like to find that middle ground. I don't.
So what do you think that middle ground might be? What do you think a middle ground might be?
I think that it's a case of lack of communications.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
But you just said there's been tons of communication. You yourself with MP Lozon, all the committees.
Well,
there's no shortage of communication.
I've done that. You know, the federal government, I would think, should be talking to the city and the city to us and everybody else about this is what we plan on the waterfront. It's not tanks.
No, tanks are not growth industry
it's not
for
that.
us. Yeah.
So we've got, I mean, at the public meetings, we had like, I don't know how many questionnaires people filled out, but a pile of them. Definitely, and if you'd see my emails today, people just don't understand it. Now, they're trying to sort of keep this as the tanks won't show that much.
Yeah.
Well, they're tanks.
Yeah, they're right in the middle of everything.
And then now that just means that no public member, no member of the public can go on that land.
Well, not only that,
We've blocked them.
We've lost that parcel of land and anything connected to it. Who wants to build something fancy next to a tank land?
Well, they won't. And even if the tanks are hidden, we've got to make sure that site plan control applies here and that they're well covered up. But even if they're well covered up with trees and flowers and whatever, people will not be able to access that property. And more importantly, what is that setting the trend for what's going to happen at the harbor? Now, if you block the citizens of Cornwall out of that totally, that would be the worst error on earth. I mean, again, I refer you back to Brockville, Gananoque, all those Iroquois places, all of
Oh,
them.
Brockville is stunning what they've done with their waterfront.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Perkins doesn't agree. He criticized Brockville, but anyone that's visited Brockville, you can see what a stunning job they've done with their
Well,
waterfront.
Brockville did the first condo. They went bankrupt.
Yeah,
All right. Then they reworked it. They rebuilt it. And now they've added 2 more.
yeah.
Okay. So at one point in time, you got to mix the economy with the needs of the general public. And as far as I know, that marina down there is fully accessible.
Yep.
And there's no blockages. And there's no discouraging people from going to the arena by building tanks.
Well, and the whole downtown core in Brockville has been revitalized because of the waterfront development.
Which brings in Levy Lage. Levy Lage and downtown in Cornwall have been working and spending millions to upgrade their facilities and try and survive in this economy. And you go do that
It's crazy.
when the Cornwall's waterfront, which is our southern border, can go, we can leave and go to Paris if we want from here. Warships come here. Now the big tankers couldn't come, but that's good. But you know, we've got access to the world, and this is what we do with it.
It's crazy.
It doesn't make sense. you
But
know?
isn't that the history of Cornwall for generations now of us screwing up our development?
Well, they've made some mistakes. Yes, that's why we formed the waterfront committee. That's why But on the other hand, I've run up against opposition when we proposed to build a boat launch at the RCF wing. Boy, oh boy, they took they were not happy with me. But guess what? All the marinas in and around Cornwall and all boaters in and around Cornwall can use it.
Well, and there are
Why
rumors that
send them to Iroquois?
and there's rumors that they're entities that are after the RCAF wing property. They want to turn that into a
Mark
condo.
McDonald is trying to do that. The best thing-
He's trying to save it. He doesn't want it to go condo.
Yeah, well, that's right, and maybe it's a partnership that needs to be done. For example, you could have some kind of non-profit group mixed in with the business, the bar, and maybe something like that works. At least they're looking at something. They're talking. If they don't resolve anything, well, at least they tried.
Yeah.
Here we don't have a chance. This makes no sense.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens Monday and down the pike. And
Well, all I can say is that anybody that has a comment, don't go crazy on us here. Make your feelings be known to the mayor, to Guy Lozon, and to the officials, Tina, what's her name, Morris, from...
well, it sounds like the federal government isn't listening to our officials.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, when you have a lack of communication, you wonder. I certainly have open communications, especially with Guy Lozon, and I expect to talk to him about it. I'm waiting to have an appointment booked. His staff called me today to let me know that they'll let me know.
Right.
So I can't complain against him right now or against anybody right now.
Well, like he said, he didn't even know about it. So it's a matter of whether he can even be effective.
Well, if he didn't know about it, and if I was him, I would certainly go see my PM and say, listen, when something happens in my town, I want to know about it, not after the fact. And that would go for the Liberals, the NDP, provincially, federally, or municipally.
What if the MP didn't do that, though, or refuses to do that?
Well, I don't think he'll refuse to do that. He's been, listen, he's going to try his best, but
What if he fails?
what if he fails? Then I think we failed as a community. We've missed the boat somewhere if we cannot sit and talk about this program.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Charlebois.
Thank you.